Hi, Jim Van Zant, one of the pastors, Carlisle United Methodist Church, with Sermon in 3 Minutes. For these weeks leading up to Christmas, we've been looking at some famous Christmas movies during our messages to see what some of the cultural movies that we all enjoy at this time of the year might be able to teach us and to tell us about the story of the birth of Christ, might be able to open our eyes to be able to celebrate, appreciate, or understand it in new and different ways. We've looked at Miracle on 34th Street. We've looked at the more contemporary film Elf. We've looked at It's a Wonderful Life, which we just did this past week, and what a wonderful film this time of the year. It has increased in popularity each and every year, but it didn't start out that way. The film has a very interesting history, and you might want to Google that to find out more about it. The story primarily surrounds the fate of a savings and loan officer, George Bailey. George was a young man, had wonderful plans, hopes, and dreams for his future, and just when he's ready to go off to college and to start that future away from this small town called Bedford Falls, his father dies, and his family looks to George to take over the family savings and loan business, which he does. He puts all of his hopes and dreams on hold, and he builds his life around this business, trying to keep this small business alive. But in town, there's the evil Mr. Potter, who's the banker in town, and the banker holds most of the mortgages and most of the collateral for all the other businesses in town, and he wants George's business too. George's business, being small, suffers setback after setback, but always seems to recover, except on one particular Christmas Eve when he experiences a setback that even he doesn't think the business can survive. And in his despair, George believes it would be better if he would just kill himself, because then at least the life insurance money could help solve the problems of the business and his family. And in a moment of despair, when he's about to do the dastardly deed, an angel comes to him by the name of Clarence. You'll have to see the film if you haven't. Clarence is a wonderful figure, and Clarence decides to answer and show George what the town would be like if he had not been there at all. Because George, in a fit of frustration, says, "I wish I'd never been born." And it's a very scary vision that Clarence shows George as he travels around the town, of a place that has become mean and nasty, a place filled with desperate people who are just trying to scratch out a living in a town that's been renamed Potterville. The end of the film is great, because toward the end of the film, Clarence gets George to understand that had he not been alive, the town would have been completely different. George's heart is lifted up, and he begins to feel a purpose to be alive once again in this town. And he goes through the town just singing praises about Merry Christmas to everyone who is around him, only to go home and see where the townsfolk are now rescuing him and his business with their contributions, instead of him just rescuing the town as his business had been doing for many, many years. Beautiful ending to the story. What can it teach us about Christmas? One of the things it can teach us is it can remind us that the story of Jesus is a story of hope, just as the story It's a Wonderful Life is a story about hope. Hope is what drives us and keeps us together, but hope has to come from outside of ourselves. Just as George had to see hope through the eyes of an angel, so God shows us hope through the eyes of the angels who announced the birth of the Savior, Jesus Christ. It's a place for us to be able to see what life is really like, not on our just human plane. That's all George could see. All George could see was life as he experienced it, and it was all dark and depressing. We need something above to lift our vision above that. And that's what God gives us at Christmas. That's what God gives us in the birth of Jesus Christ. Lifts our vision above this world to see things from his perspective. So I guess in answer, what can the story teach us? It teaches us not only do we need hope, but we have to have hope in order to move on to our Christmas futures. So if you're feeling depressed and discouraged at this time of the year, look for signs of hope. Look for hope in the smallest of gestures in other people to see God's perspective. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Sermon in 3 Minutes. Take care.